My name is Manus Mens, and this is an introductory video about CattleProduction.org.za, and also later on in the presentation an invitation to commercial cattle farmers to join our project. What is CattleProduction.org.za? It's a project to help commercial cattle farmers measure and improve production on their farms by recording and sharing their own production data in an online database. I'll explain more about that in a short while, but first a little bit about the background. The background and idea behind this project started by Dr. Andre Mens, working for the Department of Agriculture in the late 1960s and implementing a project on the Farlards Research Center where he started measuring production on a cattle farm. There is an image of Dr. Andre Mens. Later on in the 1980s and 90s, he farmed himself on his own farm in Namibia, where he continued his project and his research around the measurement of cattle production on a commercial cattle farm. He subsequently wrote a number of books. There's an image of the last two books he wrote in Afrikaans and English, all about the topic of production measurement and also ecological cattle farming, as he calls it in one of his books. A little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Manus Mens, and Dr. Andre Mens is my father. In the late 1990s, I finished my studies as an industrial engineer. And as an industrial engineer, you learn a lot about production. I was lucky enough to work as a consultant for many years in factories, different types of factories, where production planning, production execution, and all the topics around production was part of my life. So interestingly enough, although I never got into cattle farming itself, myself, my dad and I started talking more and more over the years about how can we assist farmers to improve production on their farms. And this is the history behind this project. Okay, a few definitions, and after that some principles that is the underlying factor of our project. A commercial cattle farm produces live mass. I think most farmers will agree with that. The total live mass produced over a period of time is called the output, whether that's in the form of calves or slaughter cattle, it doesn't matter. The total live mass at the starting point of the measurement is called the input, okay? And production efficiency, and that is in bold there, is the output divided by the input. In other words, how efficiently are you producing live mass on your farm is measured and called production efficiency. To become a better and more successful commercial cattle farmer, one needs to improve production efficiency. Okay, these terms are fairly high level, but try to keep them in mind as we move along. Principles 1, think kilogram, not numbers. A cattle farm stocks live mass, for example, 300,000 kilograms of live mass. That might be 600 or 700 cattle. Weigh all cattle at the beginning and again at the end of the year. This is the main simple principle of this project. Understand the variables that influences production. And there can be many variables due to the fact that one works with nature and with animals. And then number 4, benchmark yourself against others in your industry. Now on the right hand side there, John Foster Dulles was a senator in the United States, and the famous quote from him, the measure of success is not whether you have a tough problem to deal with, but whether it is the same problem you had last year. In other words, one need to measure yourself year after year to improve. Now bringing this more home and making it much more practical, the principle 2, just start measuring production, regardless of the quality of your farm or your herd, the size of your farm or your herds. In other words, this is not a project for big farmers or farmers with lots of cattle. It doesn't matter the experience or knowledge you might have. There are farmers with vast amount of knowledge and degrees. Farming, it is not just for them, it is for any farmer. It might even be a weekend farmer, as they call it. The conditions you find yourself in other words, whether your farm is in a good condition currently, in the veld condition and so forth, and how much money you're currently making. So it doesn't matter, whether you're a small business or a large business, it doesn't matter. Okay, so here is a good example of how to measure production on your farm, which is the basis of our project. Total starting point, let's say you measure at the beginning of the year by weighing all your cattle, 300,000 kilogram. Just an example. During the year, as a farmer, you might buy in cattle from an auction, for example, and weigh them as they come onto the farm. That might be 20,000 kilograms, for example. During the year, a commercial cattle farmer will obviously sell cattle, maybe more than once during the year. And the total, as they get weighed and moved off the farm, in this scenario is 60,000 kilograms. And then at the end of the year, you weigh all the cattle again, and that might be 355,000 kilograms. So bear those numbers in mind as we do a very simple calculation. To calculate the output, you can simply add the total finished weight plus what was loaded off the farm, the out. And in this example, it's 355,000 plus 60,000, and subtract from that the total starting weight and what was bought into the farm, 300,000 plus 20,000. The result of this is an output of 95,000 kilograms. Production efficiency is the critical measurement here, output over input. And that is always a ratio, as it's showed there, 0.32. And if you convert that into a percentage in blue, there, 32%. Now, this is a peg in the ground or a line in the sand, if you want, and a farmer can now measure every year the same production efficiency and see why is it increasing or decreasing, and there might be various factors that will influence that. There's another example of a measurement to measure production per hectare, which is also common, and many farmers are actually attempting to do that already. The output per hectare, output divided by hectare, in this scenario, farming on a farm of 2,500 hectares will yield 38 kilograms per hectare. And a measurement like that is common in many other agricultural practices like crop farming and so on as well. So that is the simple calculation that drives the basis of this project. What is the result of that measurement? Insight and focus, focusing more on the bigger picture, factors that influence production. In other words, if you have a number of years of data, you can look at that from a higher level, and focusing less on individual performance. And in subsequent articles on our website and so forth, we will debate this even further. The heuristic fact, and this is the starting point and why myself and my dad discussed this in the last few years quite intently, is to gain insight you need many years of data. Because you work with Mother Nature and with animals, even 10 years of data for one farmer might not necessarily put him on the right path to improve his production efficiency. So to experiment with new ideas or change the herd construction or to try something new on his farm, he will need many years to understand whether that was a good decision or a bad decision, or is he on the right path or not, or is he overgrazing his farm or not. Nature, given the rainfall up and down, can have a big effect on that. So the benefit of a database, in other words, is that you can join a forum of like-minded cattle farmers who all measure production in the same way as we showed in the example earlier, and record the factors that influence production efficiency. So in other words, in this database, every year a farmer will record all the variances and factors that influence production, from rainfall to whatever, where it is not about winning, but about sharing and learning. In other words, it's not about being the biggest or the best farmer. It's just about improving production for all. That fourth bullet point there, the example, is really what we're after here. So let's say, for example, we have 100 farmers on a database, and then in 1 year, we will actually have 100 years of data. This is the power of collecting data from many farmers in one database. After, for example, just 4 years, these 100 farmers will share 400 years of data. And then you can obviously do very interesting analysis of why one farmer is, for example, as we showed earlier in the example, at 32% of production efficiency and another farmer at 20% or maybe 40%. What is one farmer doing differently that is yielding such better results in comparison with other farmers? So that is what we're after. For one farmer, it will take very long to really get interesting data. For 100 farmers, just after 1 year, we will have enough data to do already very interesting decision making from that. What will you get from our database? An easy to use online system to record your own weights. assistance from our office with any help in the above. That's very important because we realize many farmers are not necessarily computer savvy or not interested in that type of work behind a computer. Monthly newsletters and videos all about the topic of production, case studies from farmers who apply this approach and their results, detailed analysis from all farmers about production and the factors that influences production. Okay, that's what you will get. Ultimately, we have one goal, as I mentioned earlier, and that is to help farmers measure and improve production. What else? An annual gift pack in the form of a shirt and a body warmer and so on. Books from Dr. Andre Mens will be included in your package and in your annual subscription, which we will discuss with each farmer, and a little bit of coffee from Kitty Coffee. Okay, what do you need to do on your side? Number each of your cattle on your farm. You must have a scale on your farm, so that you can weigh all your cattle, as we showed in the example and discussed briefly in this presentation. And record the weights, as I say there, annually, and whatever is added onto the farm or subtracted from the farm. How can you join this project? There's the contact details. You can go to our website and register directly there, or you can contact myself on my email or cell phone.